third speaker is Dr. Beth Mantle, and she's going to talk to us about informatics. And when I looked at her biography, I realized that she's an entomologist. And of course, I pricked up my ears there because as a very new beekeeper, I've recently been celebrating my very first honey crop, which is terrific. When I met Beth, and I realized that she was many, many, many years younger than me, I cast my mind back to a few years ago when I was doing a report for the British government, and I was in the Natural History Museum in a room with about 10 of the world's most experienced entomologists. Half of them had retired and were working voluntarily. All of them were over 70, and not a single one had any succession planning. And I'm very pleased that that has now changed. But it's clearly changed in Australia, because Beth is here to talk to us today. She is the GBIF regional representative of CSIRO, and since I am acronymically challenged, I can't tell you what that stands for, but I expect she will. Beth is going to talk to us about organising biodiversity data to support plant conservation. Beth.
That's the most fantastic introduction I've ever received. Thank you, Baroness. Yes, I am an entomologist, and I feel a little bit out of my depth here, and I actually feel as though I should apologise on behalf of my kind for all the damage that they probably do to your kind. But they do good things too, I promise. I'm actually here on behalf of somebody else. Donald Hoburn is the Executive Secretary of GBIF, and he was unable to be here today. So it's my privilege to be here in his stead and to present this talk to you. Until recently, I was the GBIF regional representative for Oceania, which includes Australia and New Zealand, but I've actually just recently stepped down from that role, so the position is open for anyone who's interested in taking that up. Maybe I can convince you after giving you this talk. So the Global Biodiversity Information Facility is an international open data infrastructure funded by governments from around the globe. It allows any individual anywhere in the world to access data about life on Earth that crosses and is shared across international and national boundaries. By encouraging and helping institutions to publish data according to a common set of standards, GBIF enables research not previously possible and informs better decisions to conserve and sustainably use the biological resources of the planet. GBIF operates through a network of nodes, of which Australia and New Zealand both have one, coordinating the biodiversity information facilities of participant countries and organisations, collaborating with each other and the Secretariat to share skills, experiences and technical capacity. GBIF's vision is to have a world in which biodiversity information is freely and universally available for science, society and a sustainable future. There are two ways in which a country can become involved in GBIF. Voting participants are countries that have decided to make a financial contribution to core funds as outlined in a Memorandum of Understanding and have voting rights according to the governing board. Associate participants are either countries that have not yet decided to make a financial contribution, and there is a limit of 5 years on this arrangement, or intergovernmental organisations or other organisations with an international scope that attend governing board meetings but do not have a vote. So examples of these sorts of organisations are things like the Encyclopedia of Life. GBIF has now established itself as an essential infrastructure underpinning science and policy relating to biodiversity. This is demonstrated by the growing volume of peer-reviewed research using the more than 400 million data records that can be discovered and accessed through the GBIF data portal. Since 2008, more than 850 research papers in academic journals have cited the use of GBIF-mediated data, and the number has been rising every year. This is the strongest possible demonstration of the return on investment that GBIF participant countries and organisations have made since 2001, building the GBIF informatics infrastructure and mobilising the data accumulated over more than 300 years of biological exploration on this planet. The GBIF Secretariat constantly scans the scientific literature to identify and tag GBIF relevant research, and there is a searchable archive available through the Mendeley GBIF Public Library. This map shows the number of plant records currently available through the GBIF data portal. There are over 116 million records, of which 86 million are georeferenced and displayed on this map. The records represent a number of sources, such as herbarium records, observations from surveys and expeditions, and citizen science records. I don't happen to know if it includes botanic gardens, but I assume that this is something where botanic gardens could actually make a significant impact. What is obvious from this map is that there are significant data gaps, particularly around Russia, China, and Greenland, but there are also biases. You can see in the oceans particularly where there are longitudinal and latitudinal dredges and trawl surveys. It's not clear here, but we have similar biases where there are population centres and highways and roads. Increasing engagement with the regions where there are gaps will result in more records being added to the GBIF database. Some good news is that the Chinese Academy of Sciences has just become an associate participant, the first from the China region. It has started work on a data portal that will help mobilise data from China and elsewhere. This is an example of a species page on the GBIF data portal. A search for Leptospermum scoparium displays a map of the Australian and New Zealand records in the database. Using faceted or filtered searching, these records can be constrained to georeferenced records only, and only those with no known coordinate issues. In this way, the user of this data can control the quality of the data displayed and ensure that it has the appropriate fitness for use. There are hundreds of facets that can be used for sorting and filtering the data through the GBIF data portal. Finally, the data can be downloaded as a CSV file by the user for further analysis in whichever way you can imagine. Now, I'd just like to give you a couple of examples of how GBIF plant data has been used in plant conservation research. In this particular study, researchers from Colombia, the United Kingdom and United States used a large volume of data published through GBIF to identify critical areas for conservation of plant diversity across South America. The team analysed records of more than 500,000 GBIF-mediated data records of over 16,000 plant species. They then developed a map of a virtual park where large numbers of threatened and locally unique species occurred within a 100-kilometre area. In fact, these were found to correspond already with real existing protected areas. However, by prioritising 24 protected areas, the researchers argue that up to 70% of South American plant diversity will be conserved. They also reveal gaps in existing coverage, suggesting new measures to conserve more than 200 further plant species, not currently included in any protected area. Critical areas to monitor, expand and strengthen are mainly located in the Ecuadorian and Colombian Andes, southern Paraguay, the Guyana Shield, southern Brazil and Bolivia. The lead author of the study said the analysis would not have been possible without ability to access occurrence data through GBIF. In this example of research by a team from Australia, they used data access through GBIF to model changes in the areas likely to be suitable for cultivating date palms, according to various future scenarios of climate change. After filtering from a total of 583 records, For the species, 163 occurrence locations were downloaded via GBIF and then were supplemented with 49 records from literature review to model the potential distribution of the date palm based on current and projected future conditions of climate and temperature and moisture. The results suggested that many parts of North Africa currently suitable for date palm cultivation will become unsuitable by 2100. By 2070, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Western Iran are projected to become less suitable. On the other hand, some areas, such as southeastern Bolivia and northern Venezuela, can be more suitable for growing date palms. The authors suggest that such projections can inform strategic planning by identifying new areas in which to cultivate this economically important crop in the future, and areas that need attention due to reduced suitability compared with current agricultural practices. I'd now like to move on to something a little bit different, which is the Global Biodiversity Information Outlook. This is a recent framework that was released by the Global Biodiversity Information Facility as a forward-looking approach to biodiversity informatics. Well, I'll just refer to it as GBio. It offers a framework for reaching a much deeper understanding of the world's biodiversity, and through that understanding, the means to conserve it better and to use it more sustainably. GBio identifies 4 areas, each with core components, to help coordinate efforts and funding around the delivery of biodiversity information. These are the essential elements of a global strategy to harness biodiversity data for common good, and they are, in summary, creating a culture of shared expertise, robust common data standards, policies and incentives for data sharing, and a system of persistent storage and archiving of this data. Mobilising biodiversity data from all available sources to make them promptly and routinely available. Data should be gathered only once but used many times. Providing the tools to convert data into evidence by enabling those data to be discovered, organising them into views that give them context and meaning. And finally, generating understanding of biodiversity and our impacts upon it by applying the evidence in models, tools for evaluation, and identifying gaps to prioritise future data gathering. If we just delve into each of those concepts a little bit further, the first focus area is culture, and this is around the context for which we share digitised knowledge, and it includes the fact that data must be available for reuse. We must follow international standards that support discovery and use of that data by whomever needs to use it. The data should be preserved for future uses. Policies and practices must be reinforced for open use, and the whole community of data providers should collaborate in order to curate these data appropriately. The issues involved with the culture of data is common with all research domains. It doesn't apply to just one or the other. So therefore, investments in this particular area will benefit everybody. The streams of primary biodiversity data can be found in a number of places, including literature and journals, natural history collections, professional and amateur field observations and surveys, molecular sequencing, and remote sensing. All of these observations or sources deliver data that is relevant to the users who want to access them through GBIF. They are all measurements of biodiversity around the globe. These then provide us a foundation for the analysis and understanding of global biodiversity. The third is evidence. This allows us to have an organised view of biodiversity data by providing a consistent assessment of quality and fitness for use, a comprehensive and digital nomenclatural taxonomy, so a standard way of referring to the data, access to all evidence for recorded species occurrence, access to species traits, measurements and interactions, and services and interfaces to access the data as needed. And this is probably the most relevant one for this group. So a series of tools that will allow you to access and use the data in a way that suits you, to visualise it and analyse it. This will act as a lens into the primary data so that you can begin assessing what you need and where the gaps might lie. And finally, understanding. The application of data to address specific questions around biodiversity. So the ability to integrate the data into spatial models, develop temporal analyses, incorporate biological reality into models, present compelling representations of biodiversity, and optimise our future investment in biodiversity informatics. This is understanding that the data is driving science and planning, particularly around policy and conservation, and it should be integrated with other research and data domains. We don't want to behave as a silo. So the GBio framework came about because after the failure to meet the 2010 biodiversity target, governments agreed that there was a need to adhere to an ambitious 2011 to 20 strategic plan for biodiversity, including the new and more detailed Aichi biodiversity targets. Improved access to information will be critical for the success of the new intergovernmental science policy platform on biodiversity and ecosystem services, also known as IPBES, which aims to strengthen the science policy interface for biodiversity and ecosystem services for the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, long-term human well-being, and sustainable development. GBio and the framework that it proposes will serve as an essential support to these and many other policy needs by extending our understanding of ecosystems and the services they provide, making conservation and biodiversity management policies more effective. If you would like to read more about the GBio framework, it's available as a downloadable document. It's only 44 pages and there is an executive summary. And I'd also encourage you to go to the GBIF data portal and have a look for some of your favourite plant species and familiarise yourself with the data that's available. A new data portal was launched this month with some incredible new tools, including the ability to use spatial modelling and other tools like Climex. So it's actually a very powerful piece of software. If you go to data.gbif.org, it should take you to the new portal and you can have a look. And otherwise, I'll be around at lunchtime if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, and we forgive you for being an entomologist because if it wasn't for your insect pollinators, a lot of our plants would be in a very bad way. It's quite clear that information is power, and your information helps us to know what we don't know so we can get out there and fill the gaps straight away.